Hi everybody. In the previous video, we created a sign up and sign in functionality. In today's video, we're going to put our project online. You're probably wondering why so early. The more complex your application becomes, the more surprises you will encounter when putting it all online at once. So we're going to create an online version already and update it regularly with the progress made on our local machine. In that way, problems are easier to identify and solve. To put your Django project online, there seem to be two options. First, Python Anywhere. With just a few clicks you can have your project online, easy and affordable. It looks great, go check it out. But it does lack scalability. Second, you rent a virtual private server, install everything yourself and try to make it work. Not so easy, from affordable to very expensive, depending on scaling. We are using a virtual private server. But as we know little or nothing about servers and development is just a hobby, our concerns were price and feasibility. This led us eventually to DigitalOcean, a very affordable VPS provider with a comprehensive detailed procedure, still working to date. There are many other providers to choose from. We encourage you to check all your options to see what works for you. As you would expect from any provider, DigitalOcean has several offerings with different configurations. Note that the procedure we follow for our configuration might work for all providers of the exact same configuration. But we didn't test that. When we have our application working online on the IP address of the server, we will then link a domain name to it and secure it with HTTPS. Let's encrypt. We're going to open our DigitalOcean account and start the process. This is the first screen after login, and here we can already create a new project. We're giving it a name, a description, and a purpose. We are not assigning this project to an existing VPS we rent. Instead, we will assign it to a new VPS, which DigitalOcean calls Droplet. We accept the location, San Francisco, and the Ubuntu 18 operating system. The cheapest offering is $4, we take the $6 offering. Here we choose the password to enter the server. Make it complex. And a name for the server. Can be left default. Creating Droplet. Besides linking our domain, there is nothing more that needs to be done here. In our opinion, DigitalOcean made this very user-friendly. Done. This is the IP address of the VPS. Copying it as we need it. Next we need a tool that can connect with the server while allowing us to configure the server with commands and to upload project files into it. There are many to choose from. We use MOBA Xterm. It's free for non-commercial use. Now we look for the procedure for our configuration. As the procedure provides a lot of information that isn't really changing anything, we have filtered out all the commands and put them in a separate procedure. Everything is the same, besides the part of the migrations. As we already have a project, we need to do things a little different there. Also, the procedure includes a lot of testing, but testing won't change anything. Either you have executed all commands correctly or you will have to start over again. So we are not testing. Make sure you select Ubuntu 18. The configuration of the VPS is the following. Ubuntu is the server's operating system. Postgres is the database server. Nginx is the web server, and G-Unicorn makes Django work on the server. We will first paste our correct IP address in two places in the procedure. To avoid we forget to change. Also, everything marked in red can be named as per your preferences. We start a server session and via SSH, we log into the server. Using its IP address and user root. We enter our password which we chose during the Droplet's creation process. Confirm save so that we won't be prompted for a password each time we log in. We are now in control of our server. As per rule, we have to create a superuser besides the root user. Don't confuse this superuser with the Django superuser, this one is for the server. Choosing credentials. Passwords are hidden. Leaving additional information blank. Confirming creation of the superuser. Granting privileges to the superuser. Now 4 commands for the firewall. Copy and paste. Note that in our case pasting the code in the command also executes it immediately, so there is no room for corrections. While we execute the firewall commands, we like to address the authentication methods for the server. We are using a password, but you can also use encrypted keys that you can generate with a tool, save on your computer and tell the server where to look for them when logging in. You can then disable the password login. It's very secure if nobody has access to your computer, but losing the keys means you lose your server access even if you still remember your password. It's called SSH key authentication. You can find all the details in the procedure. We keep using a complex password. Now we will install Python 3, Postgres, and some other packages. Watch out to use the correct command as there is also one for Python 2. Confirming installations. There are a lot of packages to download and install. This might take a minute, letting the server do its thing. Done. Now we will execute all commands for the database server Postgres. Creating the database. Creating database admin user and password. Now some commands to change database settings. Granting the privileges to the database admin user. Done. Now we will install pip and a virtual environment, create our project directory, and inside the directory we will create a virtual environment. Just like we did with our P1 folder on our local machine. First, we need to cd into our superuser folder, which is located in the home folder of the server. Mind all slashes. And inside the superuser folder, we create our project directory. Now we cd into our project directory. And create the virtual environment. And start it with this command. Successfully created and started, we see our virtual environment between brackets at the start of our command line. And just like on our local machine, we will install Django in our virtual environment. And G-Unicorn to make it work on the server. Done. We can now create our project in the directory. But this is a little bit tricky. Although we are already in our project directory, we still need to include the full path to this directory at the end of the command. Take good note of what we are doing here. The server's home folder, superuser folder, project directory, mind all slashes. Done. Our project is created. Let's check in the file navigator if we find it back and then go into our settings.py file. We are currently in the root user folder. Let's go on up to the server's base directory. There is a big list of folders. And these are all for server functionality. We will visit only 2 of them. One to change a setting. The other one is our home folder, in which we find our superuser folder. And we see that our project directory is indeed created. And inside we see our newly created project and the virtual environment. All looks as expected. On to the settings file where we deviate from the web's procedure. We import OS and a new tool decouple. Decouple is a security measure for when you put the application online. That lets you put sensitive information, mentioned in the settings file, in a separate file. We will show how it's done. The secret key from your project and the debug settings should not be visible or accessible in your settings files, so we will replace it with the decouple statements and put the actual values in a separate file, which we will create in a moment. Before deleting the standard statements, don't forget to copy the secret key, or you can start all over again. This separate file will be of the format .ini. We will name it settings.ini. Here you see what information it will contain. Let's first paste our secret key into it. Special attention. When working with decouple and your secret key contains a percentage, you have to double it, so that decouple doesn't confuse it with a functional character. Let's continue with our normal settings file first before we create the file. Updating the allowed hosts with the local host and the server's IP address. Now we will add our Accounts app to the installed apps. Adding the path to our templates folder directory. Replacing our Django SQLite database with the Postgres production database. The credentials for the database, name, user, and password, are all decoupled. Adding the authentication reference to our user model. Lastly, we will add our media and static URL and the path to their directories. We are done for now in the settings file. Later in the project, we will add our domain name and we might need to do some changes to the static and media paths. Saving our work. Now let's create the separate file to store our decoupled items. Save it as settings.ini in the same folder as the settings.py file, and paste our items in it. Here you can see the actual values. And in the settings file, we replace them with a reference to this file. From the moment we get the application working, we will set the debug as false. It's very important, as leaving it on true can leak sensitive information about the server or project to the browser. Saving and closing the file. Now to the URLs file, where we have to include the path to our account's URLs. First importing include. Then adding the path. And saving our work. As we already have our project and a user model, also for the migrations we have to deviate from the process as we want to do project and user model migrations all together. First we will drag and drop our accounts, media, static and templates folder into our project directory. Do not make the mistake of overwriting your mail project folder or manage.py file, as they are already created and unique to each project. Done. As we are using decouple, which is not standard included in Django, we need to install it. And the same for pillow. Now we can do the migrations. First the preparations with make migrations. And then migrate. Both the project and user model successfully migrated to the database. Now creating our Django superuser. Some credentials. And confirming the creation of the superuser. Collecting the static files, this seems to be a server requirement. We finalized the project creation so we can deactivate the virtual environment. Next comes testing, but as explained, we are not doing that, as it won't change anything. Now we have to create 3 important files. No room for mistakes. The command brings you in a newly created file, in which we will copy and paste this block of code. Saving the file can be confusing. Ctrl+X, confirm yes, and enter. Doing the same for the second file. The command brings you in the newly created file, in which we will copy and paste this block of code. Ctrl+X, confirm yes, and hit enter to save. The command also put the files in the correct location. And 3 commands to start, enable, and verify the files. Looks good. The next 2 steps are again testing, which we are not doing. On to the creation of the 3rd file. Ctrl+C to quit the previous verification. And the command brings you to the newly created file, where we will copy and paste this block of code. Ctrl+X, confirm yes, and hit enter to save. This command copies the file to another location. And 3 final commands. When done, we can check if our project is visible in the browser, using the server's IP address. And it works. We can see our project online. No mistakes were made. Our links are working. We can see the sign page. Our JavaScript JSON username check works. From now on, we should be able to drag and drop our files from our local machine into our VPS. Refresh the VPS with 1 command and it should always work. Only when we add new models we will have to start the virtual environment to do the migrations. Let's link our domain name now. We go to the project in our DigitalOcean account. Add domain. Enter the domain name but without www. And now add the www, but without the domain name. And assigned to the correct droplet. This created 2 A records, which is a standard requirement. Note the 3 NS records as we need them. In the meantime, we opened our account with the registrar where we purchased the domain name. Whomever your registrar is, you will find a menu name servers for your domain name. Here we paste the NS records. The only thing left now is to change the allowed hosts in the settings file. And in the nginx file, the last file we created earlier. First the settings.py file. We delete the IP address. And replace it with the domain name. One time without the www, one time with the www. Saving our work. We could enter the nginx file using the command, but we will use the navigator to show its locations. CD up to the server's base directory. And go into the etc folder. Here, look for the nginx folder. Inside, look for the sites available folder. Open the file, which has the name you gave it, with the MOBA X editor. Here too, we will delete the IP address. And replace it with the domain name. One time without the www, one time with the www. Saving our work. For changes in the nginx file, restart the nginx server, systemctl restart nginx. For changes in the settings file, restart gunicorn, systemctl restart gunicorn. Let's check if our domain name works. As our domain name is not secured yet, and the browser's memory puts HTTPS in front of the domain, we will open a private window with empty memory. And it works, we are online. Let's check what we see when we visit the IP address again. Disallowed. As we have debug set as true, we see the error. The IP address is not part of the allowed hosts. Don't forget to set the debug as false when your application works. We will do that after the video. In that way, a standard error page will be shown, which we will give some design in a next video. Lastly, we need to secure our domain name with HTTPS. We can do that using Let's Encrypt, which is free, and requires only a few commands to execute in our MOBA X terminal. Let's go to the procedure. How to secure nginx and our domain with Let's Encrypt on Ubuntu 18. In our case, we need 4 commands that matter. We separated them. We open a new session with MOBA X term, bringing us to the root of the server. We know how this works. Copy and paste the command. Hit enter if needed. Our commands execute automatically upon pasting, so no room for mistakes. In the third command, enter your domain name twice. One time without www, one time with www. In the meantime, we provided an email and confirmed some permissions with yes. And this last command is a certificate renewal test. All seems successfully executed. But we'll only know for sure when we check it in the browser. Let's refresh the homepage. Note the warning triangle indicating the website is not safe. And now the lock indicating it's successfully secured. Confirmed. We see HTTPS in front of the domain. Everything is done. We have successfully put our application online. For those that noticed the new IP address during the video, we made a mistake and had to start all over again. So as a general reminder, make sure you select the correct operating system in the procedures. Double-check all statements before you execute them and make sure you adjust them with your naming choices where needed. Also, for those that get nginx messages in the browser, try deleting the default file in the site's available folder and see if that helps. Thanks for tuning in, and we hope to see you in the next video.